What's up, Exiles? Today I'm going to basically just give you, well, first off, a clip of my League starter taking on Awakener. I grinded out to get all the way up to T16 maps, get 20 Watchstones, and take on my first Awakener of the League, and it did pretty well. I died a couple times in the fight, but altogether I'm pretty happy with how the character turned out considering I am literally wearing a trash can, and, it still was able to do damage, it still was able to be mostly pretty survivable. This is a Stormbrand Hierophant. I made a video on basically the gear to look for and whatnot. This is pretty much how it ended up turning out, with very little gear investment and a lot of time in the very beginning of the league to grind out to get Awakener and get a fight against him. After I finished this Awakener kill, by that point I was pretty ready to be on and moving on to making my next build. There's a lot of crazy things to make builds with. Recently on the Reddit, a guy posted the thing about how Purposeful Harbinger is broken. I was already onto this. I already made a bunch of jewels for it. I'm a little salty. He was the one that got to break the ice to everybody that it was broken, but it is what it is. I'm going to be working on a new character. I'm pretty much done with this one. My only goal is basically to get to Awakener, kill him, prove I could do it on a 5-link and a bunch of just gear I picked up for 1 chaos, or literally ID'd it. All I would say about this character is if you do want to play with it, the one con, or one reason I would say, or something for you to think about, is with high red maps, delirium, stuff like that, you get to the point where if there's a bunch of those on death effects and you get stunned, this build can be stunned. It has Brine King, which makes it so you can't get stunned if you've been stunned recently, but you still get stunned a lot randomly here and there. If you get stunned for a split second and then you have all these packs unleashing their barrages and their on death effects and stuff, this character ended up dying a lot when I started getting into high maps with a bunch of bad mods like Gain Fizz's extra elemental this, and it was a little bit frustrating to play to not be a build that is somewhat immortal or stun immune and moves fast and blows up packs fast. And so that's the one con I would give to it. The pro I'd give to it is you get really high gear damage, or not gear damage, you get really high damage with low gear investment. You get pretty good EHP with pretty low investment. It's a cheap build. You can make it do endgame content fairly easily, and it's kind of cool to play around with the new mana stuff. They release a new mechanic into the game. Sometimes it's complete trash. Sometimes it's like this, and it's frankly probably a little too strong for its own good. But that's okay. This is basically a character I'd recommend for a league start, but I wouldn't recommend necessarily. Oh, if you put a lot of gear investment, you could probably make it fairly tanky and you wouldn't die as much in red maps, but I still think you would end up, because it's not got a good way to, I guess, keep avoiding damage from the on-death effects. Well, maybe that could just be because they're somewhat unfair and most builds are going to die to the on-death effects from delirium and juiced maps, but that's kind of up in the air. Maybe that's something you want, maybe it's something you don't want to deal with. I personally am sick of dying, so I'm going to make an immortal build, and I might tease a little bit of it after this Awakener kill. I'm not sure if I will or not, but basically this is just kind of how the character turned out well enough, and I will basically, after this kill, I'll go into the gear I got and what I would look for, and basically if you wanted to actually invest more into this character, I will give a short description on what items could be better. I think that's basically the gist of it. choices and what all I got going on there. Let's hop right into the gear this character had. So, to start off with the helmet, I literally just bought a helmet with the Merciless Lab Stormbrand pen enchant for like a chaos. I threw one essence at it, and I called it a day. Really, if you want to improve this, the reality is you want the tier 1 Stormbrand pen enchant, you want high life, high mana, even the ES helps, better resistances. This is a horrible helmet. I literally didn't invest into it. I bought a cheap thing, threw one essence at it, called it a day. My amulet, this was a little bit more expensive. It was maybe 2 chaos. I basically bought it. I picked up some oils and allocated Prodigal to Perfection. Those are oils I had found on the ground. I think they're like a couple blue and a brown or something. I don't quite remember. This shield is actually the only good item this character had, really. I bought this thing for like 20 chaos, and that's pretty much my only gear investment I made. Basically, I was looking for cheaper shields, but then this thing came up and I thought, that's too good to pass up on. I'm going to invest in that. But basically, you just want a shield with good spell damage, good crit chance for spells, something with mana, mana regen, resistance, life. Those are all good things. This one had a lot of it. I was like, you know what? I don't really want to invest more in this character, but that's too good to pass up for 20C. For rings, I grabbed a Dream Fragments for, again, like a Chaos or 2. I actually got a perfect roll. I sniped it early on in the league. For the other ring, I pretty much just bought a ring with mana regenerate, some decks. I think I needed some decks, so I got that, and then it has some lightning res, so I was basically just fixing some of my resistances there. The belt, I went with Soul Tether, just so I could have some constant leech up, because I did have Leech's Life as Hierophant. This is not necessarily mandatory for your build. You can try other things. The problem with this thing is if you start the map out and you accidentally run straight into a pack without casting a Stormbrand, and I did this more times than I'd like to admit, is you'd start out with 0 energy shield. Even though you'll leech up to 2,000 energy shield, initially my one hit range was like 5k. After the energy shield I'd have like 7k, but if I wasn't thinking and I just dash into a pack, I'd get myself killed. So this belt's not mandatory. I would use it if you end up trying to get in like some Shimmeron wands. If you want to try to work in Shimmerons to the build, this is when it would start to be mandatory. But for right now, it's literally just I was just filling a gear slot, and it felt like a good idea to get some leech going. Rainbow Strides, I bought these for, again, a couple chaos, and I actually enchanted them with the pen enchant myself. I got pretty lucky on that. But really, if you want to invest into your character, you want to grab something with life and mana, along with resistances and movement speed, and the top tier pen enchant, which would be 10% pen if you haven't killed recently. The gloves, these are actually best in slot. So out of all these gear pieces, the shield is something I probably wouldn't be able to upgrade too much more, and the gloves, because they have this mod at the bottom, you see it says gain 2 crit strike chance for 2 seconds after spending a total of 800 mana. Whenever I would activate Arcane Cloak, I would spend like 1600 mana, which would instantly activate this flat 2 base crit, which is huge. If you've heard of it, the Flask, the Bottle of Faith, is always going for 10, 15, 20x during League because it has a mod that's plus 2 base crit. But this is a 1-alch item, so you can get crit capped pretty easily if you start getting items like this where they give you flat 2 base crit. Very strong. Would recommend. Probably the best in slot for this build. Also, you would spend like 300 mana per cast because we're using Archmage support, which would end up resulting in us hitting the 800 mana pretty often. Okay, then we have our wand. This I think I spent another 4 or 5 chaos on or something. It was actually a pretty good deal, I felt like, because it got me resistance, it got me multi, it got me crit chance, it got me spell damage. This was a pretty strong wand. I got pretty lucky snagging it for a 5 chaos. There's probably something, you could probably get better wands, but to get something like this for 5 chaos is a real good deal, and it's actually one of my better pieces of gear. Next up is our chest piece, which this is another scenario where I literally just bought a 5-link like this one, and I threw one essence at it, and then I crafted on gain life as extra maximum energy shield. And so we have a 5-link here, but it's literally to upgrade this. Easiest thing you could go for is a Cloak of Defiance. That's probably going to be the best in slot. Gives you a huge amount of mana regen, a lot of mana, and extra mind over mana effect. That would be your best in slot to shoot for. Also, something notable would be in Impulses. That would probably just be fun to get those explosions going. Would make the clear feel better, would make you feel more defensive a little bit in the fact mobs would be kind of exploding. So anyways, let's go over links now that I've covered all the gear pieces. So we have Stormbrand, as our main damage, linked up to Elemental Focus, which for whatever... Oh, I remembered. I leveled all these gems to 20, and I had 20 quality them, and they're either sold or on my new build now. But anyways, Elemental Focus, Archmage support, Energy Leech support, and Arcane Surge support. These are what the links I went for. 5 link. The 6th link would be maybe Controlled Destruction. That'd be a good one. Earlier in my guide for the character, I'd recommend Inspiration. I tested it with this build. Do not do Inspiration. It really just messes up your damage with the reduced mana cost. Do not use it. Next up, I have Assassin's Mark, Faster Casting, Flame Dash. This is literally, I would just cast Assassin Marks on self-curse or self-cast for curses on bosses, and then Flame Dash for movement. Next up, we have Brand Recall. This you can attach to Enhance. You want to get the 20 quality on it, and you want to get in Power on it. That'll make it so you can recall your brands all the time as you're moving through maps, and it makes it so you don't really have to stop to recast brands a lot. It makes the clear speed a lot better. Next up we have Arcane Cloak. This thing is huge. Pretty much whenever you want to DPS a boss, you press Arcane Cloak and all of a sudden your damage is doubled pretty much because it activates, for sure it activates Khaleesi's Grace, and on top of that it gives you like 300 flat lightning to your spells. It's huge. Well, depends on how much mana you have. Could be even more than 300 flat. It's a massive damage boost. Next up we have, I meant to buy a Lightning Warp here and put Lightning Warp in. Just pretend this is Lightning Warp. Lightning Warp, Swift Affliction, Restoration. If you get 20 quality on your Restoration, I think is good, and 20 quality on your Lightning Warp for cast speed, and Awaken Swift Affliction, that's going to make your Lightning Warp be pretty fast for proccing and a good, decent movement skill. Next up, we have Wave of Conviction on a Spell Totem, on multiple totem support, on added lightning damage. I was literally just leveling added lightning damage. Just ignore that. I was basically just comparing this to Archmage support. Moral of the story is Archmage support is much more strong, much more powerful than added lightning damage. But anyways, Wave of Conviction, Spell Totem, multiple damage support, multiple totem support. The reason for this is on the tree, we grab this thing right here, which basically gives us 100 crit every time we summon a totem. So I was basically forcing a totem into our... we needed Wave of Conviction to apply lightning exposure, but on top of that, not only could I apply lightning exposure, but I could grab an extra 100 crit just if I've summoned a totem recently. So I needed multiple totem support on top of it, because with Runebinder, which allows you to attach 2 brands to one enemy, basically doubles your damage, you lose the ability to summon a totem. Well, one totem. And with multiple totem support, you can get that back. You have, basically, it allows you to summon 2 totems instead. So that's why there's the multiple totem support there. This is pretty much the tree layout I had for the build right here. And then I grabbed a cluster jewel here. I grabbed the lightning one, and I got the node that does lightning penetration. There's other good nodes, like there's increased mana and lightning pen. If you could get both of those nodes along with one of the elemental damage nodes, that would be a huge lightning wheel cluster jewel. Later, when I go to basically make my video on my broken build I'm making, I'm going to go kind of in depth on explaining how to min-max cluster jewels. But after that, it was 2 brand jewels. I wonder if I still have them actually in my inventory. Brand. I might have gotten rid of the cluster jewels. I'm not sure where I put them. But more or less, it was 1 large cluster jewel for lightning with 2 brand jewels, and then you'd want 2 notables and a socket, basically, so that way you could get 2 strong brand notables and then an easy socket for just life, mana, lightning damage, global crit multi, that stuff. That's kind of the gist of how the build turned out. Hopefully pretty soon here I'm going to be making much better video, higher quality video on a build guide that I put a decent amount of work into, or on a build I put a decent amount of work into that's super broken. It's going to be awesome. Look forward to it because the next video I post is going to be about probably one of the most broken builds I've ever made in Path of Exile. So, you guys have a good one. Oh, wait. I just realized this is a passive tree for a Guardian, and I was going to show you, I forgot to show you the Ascendancy points. This is important because it changed from my initial guide. The Ascendancy points you take are Sign of Purpose, Divine Guidance, Illuminated Devotion, and then Conviction of Power. This basically allows you to have uptime on permanent endurance and power charges. This is Eternal Lab I took. This is Normal Lab, this is Cruel Lab, and this is Merc Lab. So all of these provide some good things. This gives us Leech, Area of Effect, Spell Damage. This gives us basically, makes our brand recall easier to just keep popping out, all along with giving the enemies 20% increased brand damage. And this gives us Transfiguration of Mind, which is a huge damage boost, along with some more mana and some more Mind over Matter effectiveness. That's the gist of it. I was thinking about taking Sanctuary of a Thought. It messes with the damage too much, reducing the cost of skills like my Arcane Cloak and my Archmage support. It would be good for the extra ES, but unfortunately it messes with the damage too much, so I wouldn't recommend that. Anyways, that's the gist of the character. You guys have a good one.